Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Ham Radio Basics Season Live, Season 1, Episode 13. Very special guest, Bob from HOA Ham. Bob, how are you this evening?
I'm doing fantastic. I don't know about very special anything, but I'm glad to be your guest this evening. Thanks for
Well,
having me on the show.
it's also nice to have a fellow Floridian on the show as well. That's
Yeah.
always very welcome because you can commiserate with everything that is Florida. So
Yeah, for sure.
So, that's one of the great things about this. Right off the bat, and as we get started here, one of the first things, want to welcome Apes here in the house, and Chris is in the house. Well, thank you guys for stopping by tonight. Bob, how did you get started in ham radio?
Great question. So my wife and I are both type A personalities to an extreme, and I think preparedness has been something that's been part of my life always, and certainly as an adult. And I think the older I've gotten, the more I realize that communication needed to be part of that plan. And I would say probably 15 years ago, I picked up an FT60R, the pretty basic Yaesu radio, really enough featured to be able to be a starter radio and good for emergency comms. I threw it in a drawer, and I figured at that point in time, all of my emergency communication needs were taken care of. Never took it out of the box, never programmed it. And probably about 8 or 9 years later, I was in a short business venture where somehow I ended up with 2 UV5Rs in my possession from AliExpress. And same scenario, into the drawer they went, part of emergency preparedness. I have ham radios. I'm ready to go, not licensed. I don't need to worry about that. But one day I was kind of curious, and I decided to break out that UV5R, watched a couple of YouTube videos, got brave enough to program some local repeaters, put it in my truck on my drive back and forth from work, probably 15 miles, but an hour each way due to traffic here east-west through Tampa. I was amazed at what I was hearing on this tiny little UV5R. And at one point, I was hearing people with Australian accents and people with English accents. I didn't realize it at the time, but I had tapped into a local node or somebody that had the repeater hooked up to a node on the wind system, which I think is primarily out on the West Coast. I was just blown away. So I think that initiated the extreme desire to check into it further. From there, I installed an FTM 400 in my truck. That's before I even got licensed. Thoroughly enjoyed the process of the installation. I'm mechanically inclined. I'm not electrically inclined. I'm not an RF engineer. I'm not an electrical engineer, but I'm very mechanically inclined. So installed that in the truck, started listening more, learning more, and I thought, I got to get my license. And so that's a long answer to how, all about emergency preparedness. And then when I actually got my hands on these radios and saw what they could do, I was just absolutely blown away by the ability to communicate locally, regionally, and globally. And I was hooked. From that point forward, just absolutely hooked, and there's been no turning back since.
So, what about taking your exams? How long? What did you use to study? How long did it take you? Did you do books, a course?
What is it HamStudy.org? Is that who does the signal stuff? Signal Stick?
Yes.
Is that who? So that's where I studied for my tech. I probably studied 3 or 4 months for the tech. Went and took it, and I don't know, maybe just a couple of questions wrong. I didn't think it was that difficult. And by then I was already bitten by the bug. Picked up a FT991A immediately after getting my tech, and then realized to, expand and have the ability to talk, on HF other than, 10 meters, 6 meters. I think can you get that on tech? I don't know. That's in the past, but immediately realized they needed the general. Probably took it about another 3-4 months and then took the general exam. I actually took that early on in COVID when they started doing exams remote. Okay. So I got which is now commonplace, but I got my general remote early on in the pandemic. And so not an extra yet, but that's how I went through the learning, doing the online tests with that software package on my phone. So I would just sit there on the phone in my work breaks and read the questions, answer the questions. I know not everybody does it this way. I test pretty well, so I tend to memorize things and then learn how to use later. Some people react to that. It's how I did it. And now I've spent, the last several years learning the how. I've considered taking the extra. And wow, that extra, it really gets technical. So for someone who's not electronically inclined, that one's a bit more of a challenge. So I'm slowly working towards extra class.
Well, to be fair, and one of the things I do each week is, the questions that I ask you, I'm going to answer myself.
Okay.
I got into ham radio. I moved down here in 2011. I got married, and then I quickly realized, in case we have these things called hurricanes that happen in the state of Florida. Okay, just these little storms that come through, and what to do in case of emergency communications. And I was totally caught off guard. And everybody, I had 3 or 4 people said, you got to get your ham radio license, okay? And you got to get a hand talkie. So I dove into it with both feet, and I used something similar to what the Signal Stick sponsors. But I think they're going out of it. I forget the name of it. I think it was eHam Online. I'm not 100% sure, but they rotated their question pool, and it made it so easy for me. It wasn't, I'm very good at, like you, I'm very good at taking tests, and I'm very good at memorization, but also too, I knew the answers, and I knew what, the answer to these questions. So in short order, I passed the tech. About 6 months later, I went and I took the general. I passed that. I think I missed 2 or 3. And then about 3 or 4 months later, I went and I took the extra, and I think I only missed like 2 on the extra.
Okay.
Those rotating question pools just really helped. Now that was in about 2014, and like you said, the UV5Rs in the drawer kind of thing. Well, I had that piece of paper in the drawer for about 3 or 4 years. And it wasn't until about 3 years ago that I started cranking things up with this. Life happened. Our granddaughter got born. My daughter got married. It just on and on and on and on and on kind of stuff. And finally, and then I got started. My next question is, okay, I absolutely love your channel, and I have been on pins and needles to get you on the show, okay, because this is one of my, obviously I live in an HOA, and what I'm going to do here in a few is I want to show you what my plans are for getting my antenna put up. But, what prompted you to start the channel? I'm real curious about that, Bob.
Well, it really didn't have anything to do with being in a homeowners association as far as what prompted me to start the channel. I think what prompted me to start the channel was the fact that I was learning so much that I just wanted to share it. I've been a manager. I've been in management most of my professional career. I've been a supply chain manager, procurement manager, director for 30 years of my life, probably coming up on 35 years of my life. And so I do a lot of mentoring and teaching. It just comes naturally to me. And as much as I enjoy all the other people that have channels, and quite frankly, several of them were instrumental in my getting into ham radio, and some of the ones that were instrumental in helping me get started. Now I've migrated onto some other ones that are kind of sustaining for me and continuing to teach me more and stretch me. What I was finding early on as I was working through some of my challenges is I wasn't getting all the answers to the level of detail that I was needing for what I was doing. And so I was learning things on my own. Again, I mentioned I'm not an electrical engineer. I'm not an RF engineer. I'm very capable mechanically. My dad was a general contractor. I've had a hammer and a wrench in my hand since I was a little boy. Working with my dad in construction. My wife and I have built a couple of our own homes. So, learning how to do things kind of comes naturally to me. And so as I learned to do some of the things that I wasn't finding answers on other channels, I thought, well, I should at least go share what I've learned. And as I started to share what I learned, I found that I was quite interested in sharing what I was learning. And then I thought to myself, as I was watching people's comments, I can't believe you live in a homeowners association, and there's a lot of negativity out there on people, directed at people who choose of their own volition to live in homeowners associations, right? The homeowners association didn't come here in the dark of night and dupe us all into living here. We chose to do this. But I watch a lot of people go, well, I can't be on ham radio. I live in a homeowners association. And I'm thinking to myself, I've been a ham radio operator for 4 years, 5 years. I've got 3 antennas in the attic and 2 outside. What do you mean you can't get on the radio? There are houses all around me. And even if you want to get to an extreme and get a DMR HT and go through a hotspot, there are all kinds of ways to get onto the airwaves. And so what prompted me to start the channel was I felt like I was learning things where I was answering my own questions. And so I wanted the opportunity to share another level of detail. I think a lot of ham radio YouTubers are exposing people to a lot of things on a broad base, and I think that's really important to our ham way of life. And then I kind of felt like I wanted to share at a deeper level, just in a niche area. So that's what I started in. And then it was, gosh, I need to help other people operate in a homeowners association because I have 75 ideas for antennas in a homeowners association. At least half of them are invisible. So I'd like to help other people who are struggling to accomplish that. And so that's kind of how I got started. And now that the ball's rolling, I can't seem to stop it.
Well, and that's one of the exciting things I absolutely love about your channel is, a lot of hams, a lot of let's call them new hams. Okay. Let's say, oh, I live in an HOA. Oh, woe is me. I can't put anything up. I have to throw up maybe a vertical for the day and then take it down.
Yep.
And all this. Okay. And I'm like, and then comes your channel. All right. And, it's just like this unbelievable rush of fresh air that comes in and look, everybody's like, the Winnie the Pooh or Eeyore, the woe is me kind of thing and all this. And I'm like, you know what? You just don't know. One of the things that I found out here for the area that I live in, we're allowed to put up a 20-foot flagpole in our yard. Okay.
Yep.
And I go to my wife when they allowed this. I just like, ding. I said, okay, there's the answer. There's the answer to my question for getting an antenna put up. Okay. And, unlike you, I'm probably more electrically inclined than mechanically inclined. And I love my dad, God rest his soul, but he was a teacher, but he did not teach me mechanics at all. Okay. He knew he did it well, but he never taught it to me. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put up get a flagpole antenna. Now I have 2 things that I need to do. Okay. Number one, obviously with a vertical, I'm going to need radials. Okay.
Yep.
But the problem is the initial problem is because we're part of the homeowners association, we pay a fee every quarter. And part of that, it goes for, they cut the grass. Well, these guys come along, they're at 100 miles an hour,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Boom. They're out there with their weed whackers and everything. So, I got to make sure right off the bat, I got to bury these radials. Okay. Because they cannot be anywhere near the surface because they'll go away. All right. Number one. Number two, what I'm going to have to do is obviously, when I put that flagpole in, flagpole, quote unquote. Okay. Right. I'm going to have a cement base to get that down there. Going to have to dig down so far to do it to make sure because it's only 20 foot. So it's not like I'm going to, running a 50-foot tower up there. All right. And then the other thing is to run the coax from there into the house. Okay. And, I'm going to have to get somebody to help me dig a trench. And I want to run through PVC pipe because I don't want to have any issues. Right. Then I got to find somebody who's skilled enough to be able to drill through stucco to be able to get it into my room that I'm sitting in right here.
Right.
So these are, it's not insurmountable. Okay. It's just going to take obviously some money, but obviously some time to do this and to do it right. And that's what, and one of the good things is for me, I got hooked up with Brandon Area Radio Society. Okay. Those are a great group of guys. I became a member 2 months ago. Yeah, 2 months ago. And they're family friendly. They do great activities. They have a great website. They keep it up to date. They're very much hands on. They like people to be at their events, that kind of thing. They're very, you feel good, versus some other ones that I've been a part of that where I'm going to be turning 65 in July. I'd be the youngest member there. Okay.
Okay.
And that doesn't quite work. You know, one in just your channel in general. I loved that video you did on that fold down antenna. Okay, because that's such a key for living in an HOA is if it's out of sight, out of mind. Okay. Tell us a little bit more about that because I really like that video, Bob.
Well, you're going to have to help me understand which video that was. So when you're calling it a fold down antenna, help me out.
The one where mechanically it would fold down like that.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. What you're talking about. Okay. Yeah, that's an antenna lift by it's for sale on Amazon through G Gable. And G Gable Radio is someone that I started working with many months ago, making suggestions to them about things that they could provide to ham radio operators in the US and globally, because they probably sell in other countries. And it's really blossomed into a relationship where I wouldn't call myself a consultant by any stretch of the imagination because they're off doing their own thing, but they're constantly asking me for ideas and running things past me. And I saw that item on their website that had nothing to do with their Amazon store. And I asked them, why don't you put this in your Amazon store? Now, my brain, I see everything as a ham radio accessory. And that's probably how a lot of us are that are in this ham way of life. We drive down the street and we see this large light post. We think tower, we think antenna mast. We see a telephone pole, we see a tree, we see a beautiful oak tree. We see, a mast for a wire antenna. Everything we see, we think antenna, antenna, antenna. And so when I see things that are mechanically capable of doing something on whether it's eBay, Amazon, or wherever, my immediate go-to is, how could this be used in ham radio? Well, that is actually a ham radio lift, ham radio antenna lift. Now, it's meant to go on commercial vehicles in areas where, say, the warehouses or the garages are low. And so for a truck to enter, they have to be able to lower their antenna. So they made this 12 volt, it comes in a 12 volt and a 24 volt version to where you can bolt this thing to the top of your commercial vehicle and lower your antenna as you're coming into the building that you're docking at to either offload or load up some gear or some goods to sell somewhere else. And so I said to him, why don't you put a small batch of these in your store, and I'll put a video out there and show people this isn't just a lift for commercial vehicles. Good grief, this is a perfect homeowners association application. Put it behind a row of shrubs. Now, it's going to be a compromised antenna because it can only take small antennas, but I've communicated all over the globe with small compromised antennas, so I'm not afraid to use those. So basically, it just runs off of the same 12 volt systems that we use to power our radios in our shacks. And it has, I can't remember the length of the cable that came, the control cable that's basically hooking up to an on-off switch. It could be in the shack and then run a 25-foot, 50-foot cable. And it has a LED indicator on it that tells you when it's up. So you put the switch back into neutral, tells you when it's down, you put the switch back into neutral. But I mean, if you're in an extreme homeowners association where, everybody around you is looking out the window 24 hours a day, and all you can do is operate at night when the sun goes down. Well, as soon as the sun goes down, flip your switch, put up your antenna, operate for a couple of hours, flip your switch, put your antenna down, and go to sleep and wake up the next day. If that's the circumstance you're in and that's the best you can do, don't say you can't get on the radio. Beat it. Get on the radio when you can. So that was just demonstrating the piece of gear that was out there. It's all over AliExpress. It's all over Alibaba. So it's a very common item over in the APAC region of the world, but it's not common here at all. So he's had a couple of those. I think he has maybe 15 of those left in his warehouse. Again, it's G Gable Radio. It's an Amazon store. And it is strictly a 12-volt motor that when you attach a small antenna, think Silver Bullet Mini.
Okay.
If you want to put something on it that a lot of us are familiar with, so you've got your Wolf River Coil Silver Bullet Mini, something like that is short enough and light enough that it can lift it up and down. The G Gable 7350T, which is their small antenna, which is also, it's only resonant on whatever you tune it to, but you can get into 20 meters and cover the whole band with an antenna like that. So that was all about trying to, I try to show the bipolar extremes. If you can get a wire antenna out, I have a wire antenna hiding in plain sight. The only time people can see it is when a bird decides to perch on that wire. Other than that, it's invisible. So 24/7, I can operate that. If I was in an extreme situation, I would be putting antennas in my attic, which I have 3 antennas in my attic. And then that was to demonstrate, if you can't get in your attic space or your roof has some type of insulation that has a metal barrier, because there are types of insulation that have metal barriers, and whether it's aluminum for to deal with temperature control and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you find yourself in a real bind and your worst case scenario is all you can do is put something up, when the light of day disappears and turn it off when you go to bed, that's what that was about. And so it's out there. We can find ways. That was just one way to operate in an extreme environment. If all you could do is do it while it's dark.
And I loved it, and I loved your video on that. And one of the things also that's intrigued me too, and I wanted to run this by you is, I know there are several companies out there. They're not named companies, but several of them have rain gutter antennas, and
Yes.
you clip it to the downspout. It uses the metal from the rain gutter or the aluminum to obviously, as you're playing, but some people say, no, those don't work. You won't do this. You only get this, and I'm like, you know what? Here's the thing, one of the things, and I'm going to steal a phrase from my drone channel. Do you have a drone at home? Use the drone that you got, okay?
Yeah.
And this is kind of the same thing. Do you have do you have that antenna hooked up to your gutter? Use it, okay?
Yeah.
Don't just because somebody says it doesn't mean it's going to happen, because there are a lot of people call them sad hams out there in a lot of the Facebook groups, and just proliferating woe is me, the Eeyore kind of attitude. And you know what? I've seen examples of people using these rain gutter antennas, and they're pulling people in from Europe, they're pulling people in from South America. It's just like the whole thing. It's kind of frustrating. What are your thoughts like on, for example, on a rain gutter type of antennas, Bob?
Yeah. Let me first talk about. I'll answer that question first, and then I'll rabbit trail a little bit. So I try it. Good grief! If you've got an aluminum gutter system, what are you waiting for? Mm-hmm. Hook a wire up to that thing and some type of balun transformer, whatever you want to call it, and give it a try. In my case, I not only have aluminum gutter, I have aluminum fascia and aluminum soffit. So now all of a sudden, I feel like I have a more difficult situation to try to make that work, but I'm still going to attempt it someday. It just hasn't turned up yet on my list of 70 ideas that I've jotted down for antennas in the HOA. I think if it's metal and it can transmit a signal, then what are you waiting for? Try it.
Yeah.
And I think then to answer the broader question and a little bit of a rabbit trail, you wouldn't believe how many comments I get on some of my videos where it's kind of like, there's no way that worked. That didn't work. You're making that up. I just want to, do you think I've got nothing better to do with my life than, I mean, good grief, I work a 50-hour-a-week job. I've got, my wife and I are involved in some charities through our local church. We've got grandchildren. We've got children. We like to walk and ride bike together. I'm a busy person. I don't have time to lie and pretend on YouTube that I'm doing something that I'm not. And a lot of times I'll show me switching back and forth on my antenna switch. So what do you think I'm doing? But I did a video right around the Christmas holidays, and it was using holiday lights, Christmas lights for the antenna. Now, many YouTubers have done that video, and what they do, I will do someday, but they send RF down the string of lights to show that the light bulbs light up, and it's a fun thing to do. I disabled every one of the lights on purpose because I was thinking, homeowners association, at Christmas time, what are you allowed to do? Put up lights. So I strung lights up against the eave of my house. I did a 20-meter dipole. I disabled every one of the lights. I tuned up the dipole. Now, that was a strange thing I just said there, right? I tuned it up on my tuner. Well, it was a bundle of 3 wires. It had a bunch of individual lights that were disabled. So I think the signal is trying to figure out where to go. Yeah. So I actually had to tune my dipole with my tuner, and I was making contacts all over the world. And I was comparing with one gentleman. I was comparing it with my 73-foot end fed, and he told me to go back to my other light, and he didn't know what I was doing. He didn't know he was on YouTube. He didn't know he was part of a test. And my compromised the antenna, which of course, I guess the 73-foot end fed is a compromised antenna of sorts as well. But my truly compromised antenna in a Christmas light dipole form that was twisted full of wire and dead lights was working. Now, you haven't seen this video because I haven't finished it yet. I have 30 videos in process. There's so much footage out there on my hard drive, it's ridiculous. So I said to my wife, well, we've got a dipole up there. We already have, 32, 34 feet of wire. Why don't I just finish out the run and make it an end fed? So I've got an antenna that was going up my eave, down my eave, and then it went back another 20, 30 feet to finish out the 73 feet. I'm making contacts all over the world again on this thing. And it's on a holiday light dipole. Well, at that point, it turned into an end fed. So when that video comes out, it'll be how to use a decoration light end fed in your homeowners association. Now, not all homeowners associations are like this. I'm allowed to have lights up year round, not Christmas lights, not colored lights, white decoration lights. You can walk all around my neighborhood and you'll see people have white lights stringed up. So I can have a 73-foot end-fed light antenna that's strung up on the eave of my house, and then it ran across the back just up above where the gutter was. So when I show that video, one of the opening scenes of the video is going to be, now here's the ideal way to set up your 73-foot end fed. It goes up in a V and then it continues back to finish out the run. And oh, by the way, I see the smoking apes here, and I don't know why I can't comment on anybody's comments. That's probably me not knowing yet how to work in a live stream. I didn't have a counterpoise on it, right? So there's my Smoking Ape's going to challenge me on that one. He's going to chide me for that, and he should, because we should be using our counterpoise wires. But I had that end fed up there in the weirdest configuration ever without a counterpoise, and there I am making contacts. What's my point of all of that? Again, I told you it would be a rabbit trail. This nonsense of that won't work, that's not to the books, that's not to the right formula, it'll never work. Don't do that. I don't want to be misunderstood. If you have the room and the freedom to put up the best performing antenna, that is absolutely what you should do. But if you don't have the room and you don't have the freedom for that, then by all means, put up whatever you can put up and start talking around the world. I think that's what people need to do. They need to stop being paralyzed by I can't, figure out what you can and do it. Again, I'm not advocating for putting up crappy antennas. I'm advocating for putting up the best you can with either the money you have available, the space you have available, or within the, let's call it the spirit of the rules of your homeowners association. I am not violating the spirit of my HOA. Am I violating, the nitty-gritty letters of those words? In my homeowners association, they're concerned about appearance. And so when I put up an antenna that is a light antenna, meaning it's got lights on it. I'm doing what everybody else is doing. I'm just talking to people around the world on mine. They're turning theirs on for decoration.
And I love that. And see, that's the thing. That's the beautiful thing about it is, you can sit in a Facebook group or out on Twitter and lament, woe is me, this be a sad ham, be an Eeyore, and but what do you have available? Okay, well,
Right.
it's like, how many times have I heard the story? Well, I had 100 foot of stereo speaker wire from Walmart, and boom, next thing you know, I had an antenna. Okay,
Yep.
it's like,
Yep.
you can use what you got. You can, I hate to use the word, you can MacGyver it, so to speak.
Yep.
Okay, and come up with something. If you need to get something in a pinch, you can do something like that.
Yeah.
Are you gonna pull in contacts from 5,000-6,000 miles away? Probably not. But are you
Right.
gonna pick some up? Yeah, you are gonna pick some up.
You are.
So you use what you have, and I think you brought up a great point about that, and I really like that. One of the things for me, that I'm looking forward to, and we'll talk about. I know you did go to HamCation this year, correct?
I did, yes.
Yeah, and what were your thoughts about HamCation this year?
Well, I had a blast. I had an absolute blast. So it was my first HamCation. I think I've only been a ham maybe 5 years. Pre-pandemic is when I finally, pulled the trigger on that. So quite some time before the pandemic. And when the pandemic hit, I think the first HamCation was canceled. And then I think the second time I had some schedule issues, and finally this time I just made sure that well in advance I scheduled time for it, and I would be available to do it. So two things. One, I just had a blast seeing things that perhaps people that I had talked to either on the phone or via email, and I got to meet them. I got to meet Richard from MFJ Enterprises. I did an interview of the guys over at Flex Radio, and I just went around and got to talk to people that had gear that I was interested in. Whether or not I owned it wasn't relevant, but I wanted, to talk to them. So I got to meet people and talk to people that outside of that set of circumstances, I wouldn't have been able to. And then, of course, I came across many booths where there were people there that I didn't even know they existed. And so it was an opportunity to meet new people that had either radios or equipment that was either directly ham related or ham adjacent. So I made some new contacts and got interested in some new things. I got to catch up with some very well-known people of ham gear, and because I'm in supply chain management and my company deals on a lot of electronic components, I was able to give some advice to some people that are actually building for us, and offered some of my services to them if I could be of help in helping them find electronic components. I've got a network of distributors globally for electronic components. And so that was a fun part. So that was me enjoying what was there. I went and I took, for my channel, I've created a series of logos. So I've got my logo, my HOA Ham logo, and then I've created a logo for every license class here in the US. So I've got a Tech Razorback, General Porker, an extra wild boar for the extra, and then a Boss Hog. So I think I'm wearing my Boss Hog shirt. So I took all these stickers with me, and I was hoping at least one person would go, "Hey, aren't you Bob from HOA Ham?" And I took a good bit of stickers with me, and I came home empty-handed. So I think the fun thing for me was realizing that I'm putting out content that is helping people. I was walking toward the main building, and if there's anybody here that's Jamaican, I'm so sorry. Hey man, Bob, HOA Ham. All right, that's my best Jamaican accent imitation. This dude from Jamaica knew who I was, and he started asking me questions and talking about my videos. And hey,
Wow.
do you want one of my stickers? And he goes, I didn't realize, of course, there's again my ignorance as an American. The license class of Jamaica would be different than our tech general and extra. And so I just gave him a Boss Hog and one of my basic logos. So I came home empty-handed because I got to meet people that saw me and said, hey, aren't you Bob from HOA Ham? And then I got to converse with them and find out what they found useful in the channel, and talk about some of the videos and ideas that they had for some videos they would like to see. And I guess, when we do this thing on YouTube, which is kind of an expansion of our desire and our enjoyment in ham radio, we do it in YouTube, and sometimes we get a lot of people that give us some, hey, that was helpful, and then we get some really nasty people, right? And so it was fun to be there and have and be recognized, I guess, to some degree, where people acknowledge that what I was doing was helping them. That's not why I started this, but it kind of tells me that I'm doing the right thing. It's helping people, and it's kind of some motivation to keep it going. So, two things. You ask short questions and I give long answers.
Well,
I had a blast. I had a blast meeting people that are the service providers and the equipment providers to us. And whether or not it had direct application to my channel, it probably had direct application to me as a ham radio operator. And then, of course, I look at everything in the light of what can I do with it in a homeowners association. So I had a really fun time meeting those people, and then just a blast meeting people that I didn't know who knew me. And then what else can I say? I met up with the Smoking Ape and Temporarily Offline. So that was a highlight of the trip, to meet them face to face. So HamCation had an absolute blast. So glad I did it. Can't wait for next year.
Well, that's one of the neat things about that. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but you can get media credentials if you have a YouTube channel. When you do that, I got media, and I know we had talked before the show that unfortunately you won't be able to make HamVention, but and my wife and I, we couldn't make HamCation this year because it fell on our wedding anniversary. Yeah. But we're going up to HamVention, and it's going to be, and those are you kind of nailed it on the head for me. I'm looking to get to know the vendors, and also and when I had Ape on, and he brought up a good point, is to support some of the the smaller places. For example, I don't know if you've heard of Quicksilver Radio. They're out of Connecticut. Yeah. Okay. Yes. They're fantastic. They have everything and anything power pole. They have it. Okay.
Yeah.
And I found them. Somebody told me, he said, why don't you go over to Quicksilver? Boom. They had like everything I was looking for, at one stop, and I told them, I'm like, oh, wow, you guys are just, it's places like that. And Ape was bringing that up, need to support people like that.
Yes.
Who else did I talk? When I talked to Jason, Ham Radio 2.0, he said he bought a Go Box for his 705. Okay. And it's just a moment. It's just a, guy that builds them by himself and everything. But, he got his card, and it was funny because I contacted the guy because I was curious as to how much they cost. Cause of course it's without the 705, but the guy said he only takes personal checks. And I'm like, whoa, whoa. Okay. All right. That was pretty interesting. But,
yeah.
The whole gist of it is, there are so many small businesses, T.O. says ham radio is the hobby of 1,000 hobbies.
Yeah.
And he's so right with that. I mean, that is probably one of the most accurate statements I've ever heard. And, for being that it's a hobby of 1,000 hobbies, you have hundreds, if not thousands, of vendors with just, that run the gambit. And so that's why it's important. A lot of us will buy our gear from like DX Engineering or Gigaparts or HRO, but then, there's MTC Trading. I found a company recently, and I just bought something off of them. They're out in Kansas, and their name escapes me, but I'm gonna mention them because they took great care of me. It's some of these smaller places that are so important to our economy that I think it's just I just think it's incredible to support. Now I got to ask you a question, Bob. Did you find anything to buy when you were at HamCation?
I did, and it's so not the cool stuff, but let's see. I only grabbed one thing here because it was sitting on the floor because I need to install it. So it's a strap for grounding. So my switches at the back of the shack are not yet grounded. I got to get them grounded. So I picked up a couple of these grounding straps. I picked up 2 or 3 runs of coax. So a lot of times I'll do backyard portable, and I'll compare antenna A to antenna B to antenna C. So I wanted to get 3 matching pieces of coax, so I could always say that, you know, coax is not influencing the performance here. I picked up a Sporty 40, and I picked up I'm looking up on my wall with my HTs. I picked up a Miracle Baby, which it's just tiny little antenna for HTs. Okay. And so when I'm sitting in the shack, sometimes I'll just be on my hotspot on DMR. And so this Miracle Baby is, I don't know if it's Comet. It's one of the two big manufacturers. It's supposed to be, you know, excellent for being a short antenna. I have my doubts. It's a short antenna. It's going to be compromised on that HT. So I picked that up. So not a lot of stuff that would make people go ooh and ah, but they were things that I was looking for specifically while I was there. So 2 things. One, you mentioned media credentials. So yes, it's a good thing you picked those up. I did pick those up for HamCation. I asked repeatedly when I was conversing with the person in advance, you know, does that get me access on Thursday for setup? Absolutely not. Well, I went in and got my media credentials, and I looked around. No one was stopping me, and off with my camera I went for the next 2 hours. So definitely got some early access there, and several people were doing that for HamCation. And then one more thing, Janice is asking, is this the FX4C? And Janice, no, it is not. This is the FX4CR. So this is the latest radio from BG2FX. And I've dropped a couple of videos so far in this on my channel, more videos about me being giddy and excited about how cool this little radio is. I'm dropping a video on it tomorrow, and have a lot more coming on that. But I have an infatuation with small radios. That's kind of something I can't let go of.
That, Bob, that one's on my list, and I, you know, it's like every time I look, they're not in stock. I mean, it's just, you know, because it's selling like hotcakes, and it's great, and I'm real excited. You know, when it's in stock, I'm definitely gonna be getting something like that.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I noticed, and it's real interesting because I know a lot of the guys, you know, when you're going to the different booths and you're talking to people, you know, it's important. Audio is real important. This is a little bit of a rabbit hole kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm going to be, I've actually got it on order. I'm going to order. It's, I'm very familiar with DJI because of my drone channel. Well, you know, they have a DJI mic, and their mic is absolutely fantastic because I know several of my friends use it, and that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. And then you can mount it on a wand, so you know, you can give it to somebody to talk to. So because I noticed in one of that when you were interviewing the gentleman from MFJ, you know, you were giving him something like that to talk with. There it is.
This is what you have. Yeah. Yep. So I have the DJI Wireless Go. I've got, I'm sorry, the Rode Wireless Go. And that's what I had used on that wand. Now, those wands are usually interchangeable. They'll take the Rode Wireless Go, they'll take the DJI. And just recently, I'm looking for it here just recently, Anchor asked me to review this for them. So Anchor Work has a competitor out there for the DJI. So I'm just starting to experiment with that a little bit. I don't think these would clip onto that handheld wand as well as the DJI, and of course DJI, excellent quality. So I think you made a really good choice there.
Yeah, I'm so excited because I know I have 2 of my drone friends that use it on their channel, and you know, it's just they said the audio is just incredible. It's just you can't beat it. Well, you know, one of the things that surprises everybody, and I tell them, you know, what do you use for your camera? And everybody asks me this on my drone channel, and they go, "You're kidding." And I said, "No, I have an S22 Ultra that I use for my camera." Okay. Well, this is my second smartphone. My other ones, I have a Galaxy Z Fold 3, but this is my quote unquote backup phone.
Yeah.
But you know, this is the one that I use mostly for camera and video and stills. And this thing does a stellar job. The camera on here I cannot ask better of this. I mean, I
Yeah.
can go out and spend, $1,000, $1,500 and try to get a camera out on Amazon, or, I could spend about $1,000 here and get something multi-purpose and
Yeah.
has just an incredible camera system.
Yeah. I think anyone getting into YouTube, use what you have, right? I mean, I look back, I've been doing YouTube now for about 1.5 years, and I look back at some of my early videos and I'm like, oh,
Oh, I know.
oh. And I thought at the time I was doing good, and I was doing the best with what I had. You know what? And that's what you should do. It's kind of the same thing with the antenna discussion. Don't let perfection get in the way of good. Go with what you have. And so for me, it's been a migration in the camera equipment that I use here in the shack right now in the studio. I've got an old iPhone that's my eye in the sky, and that's giving us the screen right now. I have a Logitech 4K webcam that's looking at me. And then, that's kind of, I use webcams here in the shack. Now, they are not as good as the more expensive, cameras that we can get from Canon, etc. But, those things cost a freaking $1,500, $700 or $800, and then a lens, and you're over $1,000. I've got 4 cameras in here that I use. I can't afford that. I don't want to say how much money I've spent on my shack. It's not embarrassing. It's just ludicrous. And but I wanted to do that because I want to put out quality content. Started where I was, and as I've been able to, I've added as the budget would allow. Not the inflow of YouTube ad revenue or any affiliate stuff. I am so far in the red, it's ridiculous. But I'm enjoying it, and people are enjoying what I'm putting out there. And like you, I use my actual iPhone 13 when I go out and shoot outside of the shack. So when I'm outside, I have 2 cameras, and this is almost always one of them that's rolling footage for me that ends up in my videos.
Yeah, and see that's the whole thing around here, and you've hit on such a key topic here, and especially when we were talking about antennas, but in general, use what you have. You don't have to go out there and spend thousands of dollars when what you have literally right in front of you is going to work for you. And one of the things, and you had mentioned it, how people have gotten back to you on how helpful your channel has been, and I'll echo that because your videos, you do a stellar job, Bob. You dot all your I's, you cross all your T's. I mean, your videos are stellar. I mean, it's just like, every time, you're reviewing those new tripods from G Gable, I'm like, okay, I got to have one. It's like, I'm hooked. Okay. When I saw that. Okay. And I'm going to be getting one. Payday's coming up, which is bad. Payday's tomorrow, and that's a bad thing. But with all that being said, one of the reasons I got into, and I'll go back to the drone channel, is a lot of great guys had a lot of great videos, but they were like 35, 45 minutes. And one of the things that I quickly realized, getting into the YouTube space is, the shorter the video, because people have a short attention span. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you could do something in 10 minutes or less, that you may get them to watch like half your video, and that's a win-win. And that's what I strive to do. Like when I started out on my drone channel, and I pretty much keep to that. Okay. I rarely go over 10 or 15 minutes. And that's one of the other things that I wanted to do here, of course, except for the live streams, is keep it down to a 10 to 15 minutes because people are going to want to watch them. And I know you do the same thing with yours too. And I think that's so important because, I don't want to waste everybody's time. I want to get to the meat of the matter. Okay. For example, let's say I'm doing one on, I'll just throw Icon 7300 basic setup. Okay. I'm going to show you how to plug the mic in. I'm going to show you where the antenna goes. I'm going to show you where the power pole connectors go. Okay. I'm going to get to it right away. I'm not going to talk for 3 or 4 minutes. We're just going to get into it and see. And that's the thing that I love about your videos. Okay. You get right into it. There's no, extemporaneous kind of stuff, which I think is important.
Yeah. I think, as I've The number of people that I have that I've subscribed to obviously has grown because this ham radio way of life is such an important thing to me. So I do have just a ton of people that I've subscribed to, but I do find that I tend to subscribe to people that are similar to me in the regards of how quickly they get to something. And I think the great thing about YouTube, first of all, it's free content for the world, right? If people want to give you a super chat, great, they give you a super chat. If somebody wants to buy something where you're an affiliate, fantastic. But it's all free. I mean, people have all this information at their disposal for free. So that's an incredible thing for people. And there's enough of us out there with enough different style that there's something for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you like someone that's a little bit more chatty, if you like someone, my wife and I joke around, I'm boring Bob. I mean, I am, when it comes to life, I am pretty just steady. I take life as it comes. I don't react to much. I mean, at least externally, perhaps inside I'm freaking out, but outside I'm pretty calm. And it's very rare that you see me getting all animated on a video. It's just my nature. As a matter of fact, quite the opposite. I can sit there and talk about something being very exciting. Right? It didn't sound very exciting coming out of my mouth. It was pretty monotone. So I have to work at that. But there's enough of us doing this that there's something out there for everybody. If you like chatty, there's chatty people. If you like people that are flamboyant, there's flamboyant people. If you like people that are right to it, there are people that get right to it. And the way I look at it personally is you're spending your time. And if I'm not giving you something valuable in return, you should click off of me and go find someone else to listen to. That's kind of how I approach my channel and my videos.
Yeah, well, you do a great job with it, and we need. And one of the challenges I think, and I've taught, and I've asked this to all my guests, and I wanted to get your take on this as well too. The ham radio community, I think, in general, does an excellent job in terms of education. And what I mean by education is getting people prepared to take the general, the tech, the general, and the extra. We do an excellent job at that. We have incredible resources. I mean, just absolutely incredible resources. But I think one of the points where we end up failing is, okay, let's say after that person completes their tech or their general or their extra, okay, people congratulate them, and then it's just like all of a sudden there's a void. Okay, what next? Yeah. All right, and I know we talked briefly about clubs as well too, and this is why it's so important. Modern days, okay, we didn't, way back in the day, and of course I'm not way back in the day, and as far as ham radio is concerned, but from way back in the day, your Elmers were in person Elmers, but now you can go out to YouTube and pretty much find anything you want to. For example, there was a gentleman, and I forget his name. He has a fantastic channel. He did an A to Z video on the 7300. I mean, he did like 40, 50 videos on it. Just everything you want to know, it's out there. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. But I think it's also important too, if you can, to try to get hooked up, not necessarily, if there's a club available, try to do that. If not, try to find somebody in your area that's a ham and get hooked up with them, because I think it's so important.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I myself have unfortunately been unable to do that from a schedule perspective. Mm-hmm. When I first started, that was one of the first things I wanted to do, was connect with a local club, and there are several of them around me. The pandemic hit at that point in time, and so people were just kind of being separated and not face to face. And so what I found was that YouTube was my Elmer. And the various people that I connected with on YouTube became the Elmers and helped teach me. And I guess this actually was pre-pandemic, because my schedule, I keep referring to my schedule. I don't know how to say it, enough that people would understand it. Like I said, I work 45, 50 hours a week. I drive back and forth from work because I'm no longer working remote like I used to, maybe part of the time now. My wife and I are involved in some charitable organizations. We work with Feeding America. We pick up at some local grocery stores and deliver the food goods to a food pantry. We've got grandkids. We've got children. We've got aging adult parents that are needing some care. And then my wife and I happen to like each other. So, I mean, I know that's not how everybody is, but my wife and I very frequently throughout the week, we live close to the beach. In 10 minutes, I'm at the beach, and we'll go walk 2 miles at the beach for our exercise at the end of a day. And so for me, what I found difficult was finding the time to pull away from all of my other activities to go to those meetings. But please don't anyone take that as a disparaging comment, because I think one of the best ways to learn is to watch other people do. And if you can do that face to face, as opposed to me telling you something on a video where you can't ask me questions on the spot, we're missing an opportunity. So when you can be face to face and have somebody show you the how, I think that is an incredible benefit. Would absolutely agree with you there. And then if you don't have that, again, YouTube is such an unbelievable platform that, there's no reason for anybody to say they can't learn something, because I would say it's very few things in this world that you can't learn if you watch enough YouTube videos from knowledgeable people. So I guess maybe I can't learn to be a nuclear physicist, but I don't want to either. But if I want to learn how to fix my water softener, that's a very specific water softener. And even though I'm mechanically inclined, I didn't know how to take the head off and exchange the resin. Well, guess what? There were 3 YouTube videos on it. And I didn't pay the company $3,000 to come out and swap out my water softener. We spent $250, took the head off, swapped out the resin, and now we're good to go because I watched YouTube videos on how to do it. So I don't want to negate your point, because I think it's spot on. If you can get with somebody who knows the how and learn, that's the best way, because you have interaction and follow-up questions. And then 2 days later, you're sitting in your shack and something happened and you need to talk to somebody. You pick up the phone, you call them, you ask them the question. If you can't get that, there's plenty of content out there available to you.
Yeah. And you brought up a good point, because like I happen to enjoy spending time with my wife. Okay. And, we like to go for walks in the evening and do things together. Spending time, obviously, I have to go up to Ohio to spend time with my kids, which I'm going to be doing during HamVention this year, and getting to meet our second granddaughter, who we just missed by a few days.
Aren't grandkids the greatest? Aren't grandkids the best? I mean,
I'm like, I go to my wife. I said, you know what? I said, why didn't we do grandkids first?
Exactly. That's what everybody says.
Seriously. Okay.
That's what everybody says.
Last year, 2 years ago, my son-in-law, my daughter, and she was 3 at the time, our first granddaughter, came down. She comes running up in my lap. I'm sitting in my chair here at my desk. It's like, Grandpa. Well, every time I come, I bring my stickers for my channels. Okay. And she wants, Grandpa, give me stickers. And I'm like, well, you've been a good girl. Okay. It's the biggest thing in the world to her. And then also too, it's just like, oh yeah, I gave her a pen from the channel. She's just like, oh my gosh, Yeah. But you bring up a good point, because, I work like you, I work for public supermarkets in IT. And, I pulled a project. I was pulling 55, 60-hour weeks on a project recently. And, you have little time outside of, eating, sleeping, spending time with your spouse, significant other, and communicating, let alone being able to go and do this. Now, I'm going to carve some time out coming up after I get back from HamVention, because I do want to get connected with some of these guys, because I am going to need some help. Okay. I mean, it's just like, there's some things that I can do. There's some things that I can't do. Okay.
Right.
It's just one of those kinds of things. So, in closing, I do want to thank you so much for stopping by tonight, Bob. It has been an absolute pleasure. You have one of the channels that every time that notification comes up, I'm watching that video. Okay. It's just, you never cease to put out quality content. And that's one of the things I love about your channel. I've learned from your channel. And I think that's always a good takeaway. Whenever you watch someone else's channel and you learn from them, that's a huge plus all the time. And like you, I'm looking forward to meeting, hopefully I'll get to meet T.O. and Ape and Jason and Josh and others when I get up there for HamVention. I'm really looking forward to that and spending some time with them as well. So stick around. I'm going to close things out here. I want to thank everybody in the chat. I know Janice was here. Jeff was here. Let's see who else. Mike was here. Ape was here tonight. Let's see who else. And Chris was here. Thank you guys for stopping by. Really appreciate that. Guys, always, it's a great day to make a QSO. 7-3s, everyone. Take care.